Odisha Affairs News TV is an independent digital fast news and opinion platform focusing on Odisha's political, economic, and social landscape, while also engaging with national and global issues. It positions itself as a disruptive voice in journalism, blending state centric coverage with broader investigative and analytical reporting. Hello and good evening. I am Satya Brahma and you are watching Odisha Affairs News TV. Tonight we turn our spotlight on the evolving landscape of Odisha politics, a story of shifting alliances, emerging leadership, and the changing aspirations of the people. Odisha has long been a state where regional identity and national influence intersect. From the dominance of regional parties to the growing footprint of national players, the political narrative is undergoing clearly a transformation. The younger generation is demanding transparency, accountability, and development driven governance, while traditional power centers are recalibrating their strategies to stay relevant. Naveen Patnaik, the former chief minister and the veteran politician, recently declared that the BJD will exist for 100 years. This is just not a moral booster, but it's a recognition that the Majhi model has successfully disrupted the BJD's 24-year-old script. For a year, the airwaves of Odisha have been thick with a carefully crafted propaganda. The image of Mohan Majhi as the accessible son of the soil, a man who listens where his predecessor merely observed. But as the honeymoon period of the BJP's historic win settles into grit of daily governance, a more complex reality is emerging. While Majhi occupies the office, Naveen Patnaik continues to occupy the state's collective psyche. The BJP's People's CM tag is facing its toughest test. The former unshakable silent devotion of population that still views Patnaik not as a former politician but as a guardian. Let's now dissect the Pandian factor. Naveen Patnaik's health is visibly declining. Many believe that Vairav Karthikeyan Pandian, the former bureaucrat turned political strategist, is the one who is calling the shots. Though not in the front line, his imprints on the BJD's decisions is unmistakable. Several party workers and leaders feel marginalized, arguing that Pandian's dominance has reduced their relevance. His wife Sujata Pandian retired from bureaucracy after BJD's defeat, symbolizing a retreat from formal power, but reinforcing the perception of a family-centered influence. Therefore, can Pandian emerge stronger? His organizational skills and proximity to Naveen gave him leverage, but the lack of electoral legitimacy and resentment among sidelined leaders remain formidable obstacles. The propaganda of accessibility. The BJP's primary weapon against the BJD legacy has been contrast in reach. The plastic chair versus the ivory chair. Every image of Majhi sitting in a village of reopening the CM's grievance cell is a deliberate strike at Patnaik's later years, which were perceived as bureaucrat clocked. The tribal identity. By emphasizing Majhi's Santali roots, the BJP has tried to frame him as the true Odia, implying that Patnaik's 24 years were an era of alien governance. We do the reality check. Network 7 media ground report suggests that accessibility doesn't always equate to authority. While people can now meet their CM, there is a growing murmur that the decisive silent efficacy of Naveen era is still missing. The BJD has successfully framed Majhi's frequent consultation with New Delhi as a loss of Odisha's autonomy, a narrative that is beginning to sting. The People's CM title is a self-awarding badge that Mohan Majhi is working hard to earn. However, a leader's stature is not built by the absence of his predecessor, but by the weight of his own legacy. Mohan Majhi has successfully opened the doors of the secretariat, but he hasn't yet to close the hearts of the people of Naveen Patnaik. As long as the Naveen Niwas remains the emotional pilgrimage site of millions, Majhi's tenure will be viewed not as a new book, but as a difficult second chapter. The propaganda is loud, but the silence of the Odia voter is louder. The battle of Odia's soul is far from over. As we move into 2026, the political landscape of Odisha is witnessing a fascinating clash of archetypes based on current ground report. Here is the Network 7 People's ground result summary, breaking down how the Majhi administration's first year has landed across the state's distinct regions. Mohan Majhi, in fact, has successfully shifted the politics of Odisha, but he hasn't quite yet fully shifted the culture. While the People's CM tag is effective in Western Odisha and tribal belts, The coastal heartland still treats him as a temporary tenant in a house built by Biju and Naveen Patnaik. For over 2 decades, the political map of Odisha was painted in the steady, unyielding green of the Biju Janata Dal or the BJD. But today, the winds blowing from the Bay of Bengal carries a different scent, one of the pessimistic transition. The 2024 elections didn't just change the government, they settled a monopoly, signaling a profound shift in the Odias of national identity and the state's democratic architecture. Therefore, the saffron surge from margin to mandate, the rise of Bharatiya Janata Party in Odisha is not a sudden accident of history. It is the culmination of a long decade slow burn strategy. By successfully weaving together national aspirations with the threat of Odia Asmita, the BJP dismantled the BJD's fortress of image. The party moved beyond its traditional strongholds in western Odisha to dominate the coastal heartlands, fueled by the outsider narrative, a potent campaign against a perceived dominance of non-Odia influence within the BJD's inner circle. Cultural resonance, leveraging issues like the missing keys of the Jagannath temple of Ratna Bhandar to connect with the deep-seated spiritual consciousness of the electorate. Aspirational youth, for a generation that knew only the chief minister, the promise of a double-engine growth and the job creation overweighed the comfort of existing welfare schemes. The decline of the Biju Janata Dal is perhaps the most poignant chapter in the saga. After 24 years of stability, the party finds itself at crossroads. The loss was not merely of seats dropping from 112 to 51 in the assembly, but of its invincibility. The cracks are now visible. Internal factionalism, long surpassed by the towering presence of Naveen Patnaik, has begun to surface. With the suspension of key MLAs and murmurs of new regional output emerging, the BJD faces an existential crisis. Can it survive as a regional force without the absolute authority of its patriarch? The transition from a ruling machine to a frightening opposition has proven difficult, as the party struggles to redefine its identity in a post-Naveen era. Odisha is no longer a stable monolith. It has transformed into a dynamic, competitive laboratory of Indian democracy. The BJP now carries the heavy burden of incumbency and the challenge of governing a complex, culturally rich state. The BJD is fighting for its legacy and its life, and the Congress is looking to reclaim its long heritage. The lost heritage, in fact. As the state moves towards the 2026 local election, one thing is quite certain. The Odia voter is no longer a silent spectator. The era of predictable politics is over, and a new, more contested chapter has begun. This research report examines the complex power dynamics currently reshaping Odisha's political landscape, focusing on the influential Pandian Kampul and the existential crisis facing the Biju Janata Dal. Let's decode the invincible powers of the Pandian nexus. For over a decade, VK Pandian was more than just a private secretary. He was the primary architect of Odisha government's 5T called Transparency, Technology, Teamwork, Time and Transformation framework. His wife Sujata Pandian, or popularly known as Sujata R. Kartikeyan, was equally pivotal, leading the Mission Shakti department, which organized nearly 70 lakh workers, in fact women workers, into the self-help group called the SHGS. The power couple, while the VK Pandian managed the Chief Minister's office and infrastructure, Sujata in fact built a massive grassroots loyalty based among the women, a demographic that served as the BJD's silent vote bank for many years. In a coordinated retreat following the BJD's 2024 electoral defeat, both now have exited from bureaucratic services. VK Pandian took voluntary retirement in October 2023 to formally join with the BJP, while Sujata Kartikeyan followed suit, with a retirement becoming effective on March 13, 2025. Despite VK Pandian's public announcement of withdrawing from public politics and active politics in June 2024, reports from late 2025 and early 2026 suggest he remains surrogate decision maker as Naveen Patnaik faces health challenges and spends significant time in Delhi and in Naveen Niwas. Pandian is still widely viewed as the person holding decree over the BJD affairs. The former Chief Minister's silence regarding Pandian's polarizing role is a calculated but a risky political stance. Patnaik has consistently defended Pandian as a man of integrity and honesty, insisting he was an implementer of vision rather than a successor. By remaining mum on the outsider narrative, Patnaik avoids validating BJP's campaign that he has lost control. After 24 years of centralized power, there is no plan B. Patnaik's silence reflects a deep-seated reliance on the only administrative and political machinery he trusts. Even that machinery is now liability for the party's public image. Now the Dhritarashtra comparison. Critics and some disgruntled BJP veterans have begun comparing Patnaik to the mythological king Dhritarashtra, blind to the facts and the faults of his man Friday, while the party structure crumbles upon him. V.K. Pandian's current status is paradox. He is extremely and administratively omnipotent, but politically radioactive. He still controls the BJD strategy, communication and internal resource allocation. As long as Patnaik is the party head, let's not be mistaken, but Pandian remains the gatekeeper. The outsider attack or the non-Odia label has stuck. In the eyes of the electorate and the rising BJP, he is the symbol of why the BJP has lost. His presence acts as a lightning rod of the opposition attacks, making it difficult for the BJD to win back coastal voters. As of early 2026, the Biju Janata Dal is facing its most significant threat since its inception in 1997. The party is currently battling internecine conflict, with Patnaik's health being a major factor. Senior leaders like Arun Sahu and others have begun to voice discontent. The party has now already seen the suspension of veteran leaders, signaling breakdown in the one monolithic discipline. Without a clear son of the soil successor, the BJD is at high risk of a split. Analysts in fact suggest that if a non-Patnaik or a Pandian-backed leader is forced upon the party, a large faction may defect to the BJP or attempt to form a new regional outfit. The BJD's future depends on whether it can pivot back to the roots of Odia pride without Naveen Patnaik's personal charisma. Without him, the BJD risks becoming a placeholder, a party that slowly breeds its cadre to a resurgent Congress and a dominant BJP. As Odisha stands at the crossroads, the question remains, will the politics of tomorrow be defined by continuity or by bold disruption? Stay tuned as we bring you insights, debates and perspectives that matter.